At 6:30, local time, the still pink horizon above the southern Red Sea made the morning patrol feel almost routine. Two U.S. Navy MH-60R Seahawk helicopters, call signs Lancer 71 and Lancer 72, were circling well above a mixed coalition surface force escorting commercial traffic. Lancer 71 had lifted from USS Dwight D. Eisenhower. Lancer 72 launched minutes later from USS Growley. Their assignment sounded simple: hover overhead, scan every radar return, and check on anything that didn't look friendly. What neither aircrew knew was that, just beyond the radar horizon, 4 Houthi fast attack craft lurking off Houthis already had the convoy's most valuable ship in their crosshairs. The Singapore-flagged container vessel MV Mars Congo, a big, slow, lucrative target, was plowing northeast, 55 nautical miles southwest of Al Hudaydah, Yemen. The attackers' plan followed classic swarming doctrine: race in, saturate the bridge with suppressive fire and thermobaric RPGs, foul the rudder with small arms bursts, then hook grappling ladders over the rail before the crew could blink. Once aboard, they would force the master to transmit a false flag course change toward Houthi-controlled coastline. But there was a wrinkle. The Mars Congo carried a 4-person Trident Group security detachment and, more importantly, 2 Navy helicopters were already airborne. The ship's guards possessed only M4 carbines and a single M240B, completely outranged by the Houthis' PKMs and Taba 14 thermobaric RPG rounds that punch through 300 millimeters of armor plate, 12 times thicker than the freighter's hull. The container ship's captain triggered his distress beacons the instant 4 low silhouettes appeared on radar at 6 nautical miles. Lancer Flight received the mayday and shoved their throttles forward, settling on 160 knots. Even at that speed, the 26 nautical mile gap translated to 9 anxious minutes, 5 minutes more than the defenders realistically had. At 0631, the MH-60R's AN/APS 153V radar, initially cluttered by wave tops and 32 miscellaneous contacts, picked up a tight diamond of 4 7 to 10 meter Bogomar-type craft. All 4 boats were charging at 50 knots, 3 or 4 Houthi militants per hull, every gunner already standing behind a PKM or cradling an RPG tube. Each skiff bristled with jury-rigged Starlink terminals, streaming live drone feeds and surface pictures back to command posts ashore, another Iranian fingerprint on asymmetric maritime warfare. On Mars Congo's fantail, the Trident guards opened up at 1,800 meters, brass tinkling across the deck plates as 7.62 millimeter tracers arced toward the sea. One attacking craft lost steering almost immediately, but the remaining 3 closed to 600 meters in 47 seconds, well inside RPG envelope. A thermobaric warhead from Boat 2 whooshed past the superstructure, missing by 3 meters. One direct hit there could have blinded the bridge, jammed comms, and left the freighter a drifting hulk. The defenders' stubborn stand, forcing the militia to pause and lob rockets, bought barely enough time. By 0639, Lancer 71 and 72 swept into view a mile off the starboard quarter. With ROE authority granted seconds earlier, the crews needed only positive ID to start shooting. To shake clutter, the pilots toggled the radar into narrow-pulse moving target indicator mode, shortening transmit bursts to half-microsecond pings. That let Doppler shifts pop moving hulls out of the chop like bold text on a page. A follow-on ISAR sweep stitched together a thumbnail-sharp silhouette. 4 Bogomars, 2 already smoking. Target set confirmed. Each Romeo carried twin pintle-mounted GAU 21.50 caliber machine guns. The weapon spits 1,100 rounds a minute with effective range of 1,850 meters, perfect for thin-skinned speedboats. But the Houthis fired first. Green-tip PKM tracers flicked past the rotor discs, a few rounds zipping within 15 meters. Both helicopters dropped to 150 feet AGL. Automatic dispensers spat out 24 RR-180 chaff packets and a dozen Solar Bright MJU-68/B flares, precautions in case any shoulder-fired IR missiles were lurking. None appeared, but it paid to stay paranoid. 641. Lancer 71's door gunner squeezed off 3 hammer bursts. The first slashed holes in Boat 1's engine block, the second ruptured plastic jerry cans lashed aft, the third burst met fuel vapors. A blossom of orange fire rolled skyward, and 45 seconds later, only a slick marked where the skiff had been. The Seahawk banked left. Another half-second burst shredded Boat 2's rudder. A full 3-second spray stitched waterline holes. The skiff veered crazily, shipped water, and capsized by 0642. Now, both helos converged on Boat 3. Their intersecting torrents of API rounds chewed through plywood decking and the aluminum keel. Crewmen tried bailing with buckets, but dozens of holes 3 feet below the waterline turned the hull into a colander. At 6:44, it vanished beneath the whitecaps. Boat 4 needed no encouragement. It spun northwest, trailing smoke. Lancer Flight held fire, staying to shepherd the merchant vessel rather than chase a cripple. In 7 blistering minutes, the Seahawks had dumped roughly 1,800 rounds, sinking 3 attackers and scattering the 4th. The Mars Congo's contract guards waved their gratitude skyward as the helos resumed overwatch. Washington and Navcent were not content to chalk up a defensive win and call it a day. Houthi command nodes had orchestrated multiple strikes on shipping the previous fortnight. Simply swatting boats wasn't deterrence enough. 8 hours after the sea battle, destroyer USS Grally coasted within gunnery range of 3 known coastal radar arrays feeding targeting data to Houthi boat crews. The ship's Mark 45 Mod 4 5-inch gun thundered 92 times, lobbing 70-pound high-explosive and time-fused airburst shells 9 statute miles inland. By sundown, the surveillance sites at Jabal Attar, Al-Mocha, and Ras Issa lay smashed. Post-strike drone footage suggested Houthi maritime sensing capacity dropped 60% overnight. Then came Phase 2. At 18:43 on 1 January, 4 FA-18E Super Hornets from VFA-131, catapulted off Eisenhower, released AGM-154C joint standoff weapons from well outside SAM range. Each glide bomb carried a 500-pound broach tandem penetrator capable of boring 3.7 meters through reinforced concrete before discharging a molten copper jet. Their aim point, the Al-Dura Missile Storage Complex. The quartet of JSOWs punched into the bunkers almost simultaneously. The secondary explosions that followed hinted at stored SAM motors, C-802 anti-ship missiles, and stacks of Shahed-type drones cooking off. SIGINT monitors later intercepted frantic Houthi radio traffic confirming loss of 18 CASF drones, 4 NOR ASCMs, multiple guidance kits, 12 Houthi specialists, and 2 Iranian advisors. The message was blunt. Any assault on international shipping would bring immediate defense and methodical, punishing retaliation, at sea, on shore, and in the supply chain. The user seems to want me to expand a specific paragraph into 800 words, keeping the content similar but incorporating more detailed description. This likely involves adding elaboration to aspects like atmosphere, reflections, and further details on the narrative's events. Since it seems to be a fictional account, I don't need to search for sources. Instead, I'll focus on expanding the paragraph thoughtfully, ensuring the tone stays documentary, reflective, and descriptive while staying consistent with the earlier material. Thought for 10 seconds, dawn broke over the southern Red Sea in slow brushstrokes of lilac and saffron, as though the horizon itself were trying to paint away the violence of the night before. On the Mars Congo, the acrid stink of burned paint still clung to every handrail. Deckhands in orange coveralls were out early, scrubbing soot from the hull while the ship's bow reverently parted the gentle morning swell. Buried somewhere deep in the navigation logs, the vessel's master had typed a simple line. Course resumed, 13 knots northbound. Yet every soul aboard knew those few words hid a razor-thin escape from capture. Blackened streaks along the superstructure marked the near misses where thermobaric RPGs had screamed by. Bullet dings around the M240 gun shield looked like molten raindrops frozen in steel. The scars would stay until dry dock, a grim set of tattoos reminding crew and cargo alike how fragile a merchantman's skin truly is when war intrudes on commerce. 20 nautical miles astern, Lancer 71 and Lancer 72 banked toward USS Dwight D. Eisenhower to complete their post-action checks. Maintenance crews stood ready on the flight deck, chalk and chain in hand, waiting to lash down birds still warm from battle. Mechanics would soon probe the rotors for stress cracks, refill spent countermeasure canisters, and sweep .50 caliber brass from every crevice. For now, though, the Seahawk crews were escorted straight to debrief, helmets under one arm, still tasting cordite and salt in the back of their throats. The door gunner from Lancer 71 felt vibration ghosts in his palms, the phantom thump of GAU-21 bursts even after the last round had left the barrel. In the ready room, an intelligence officer greeted them with coffee that tasted of engine oil, ready to transcribe every second of radio chatter, every radar mode switch, every choice that turned a 9-minute sprint into a textbook rescue. At NavCent headquarters in Bahrain, analysts pulled an all-night shift feeding satellite imagery and SIGINT into a mosaic. On a glowing operations screen, 3 red X's marked the destroyed Baghamars, while fresh overhead photos confirmed piles of twisted antenna masts where the Jabal Attar radar site had stood only hours earlier. Drone video of the Al-Dura strike showed secondary explosions rippling like lightning through the bunker complex, detonations so violent that infrared cameras washed out in blank white. A brief report delivered to the 5th Fleet commander summarized the cost to the Houthis: 3 high-speed craft lost, 3 shore-based radar nodes obliterated, an entire drone and missile cache reduced to smokeless rubble, and 14 trained operators, including 2 Iranian advisors, gone. The comptroller in charge of running asymmetrical naval operations now had to explain to his superiors why months of clandestine logistics had vanished in a single calendar day. One strategist wrote in the margin of the briefer's note, "Attrition this rapid forces a doctrinal pivot, or capitulation." Back at sea, the coalition task force slipped into routine as best it could. Lookouts on the bridge wings of USS Grally still scanned every whitecap, but their shoulders relaxed a fraction, comforted by the gunmetal smell drifting from the 5-inch turret that had hammered enemy radar sites overnight. On the merchant ship, the Trident Group security detail cleaned and stowed their weapons. One guard spent 10 quiet minutes oiling the hinge of a folding ladder that, had events gone differently, might have been climbed by armed intruders. In the galley, the cook ladled oatmeal and whispered thanks to no one in particular. The container vessel's chief engineer permitted himself an extra cup of tea, staring out through a porthole at a sunrise he was honestly surprised to see. Ordinary seafarers seldom crave heroism, and yet last night had demanded every scrap of it they possessed. Weather forecasts predicted calm seas for the next 3 days, which pleased the Mars Congo's charterer in Singapore, but posed a new dilemma for the Houthis. Without shore radars and with 3 patrol boats rusting on the seabed, their maritime situational awareness had been punched full of holes. Intercepted chatter suggested frantic efforts to reposition smaller portable radar units inland, equipment meant for tracking migrating birds, not warships. Meanwhile, the Iranians who once advised from safe rooms in Al-Dura were now silent, their encrypted channels eerily vacant. Coalition planners took that as proof the previous night's message had landed. Board 1 freighter and you invite fire on all your assets. Still, no one aboard the Eisenhower allowed themselves to believe the fight was finished. They had seen enemies adapt before, swapping out speedboats for missiles, switching daylight swarms for moonless night drone strikes. As the sun climbed higher, a cool westerly breeze carried the hiss of whitecaps against the hull and mingled it with the low growl of distant turbines. The Red Sea traffic separation scheme was already filling. Tankers from Ras Tanura heading for Suez, Chinese-built Ro-Ro ferries bound for Djibouti, a German research vessel trailing sensor arrays like silver jellyfish tendrils. In that vast moving tapestry, the Mars Congo looked ordinary again. Another steel box hauling consumer goods the world could not go a week without. Only the slight ripple of scorched paint suggested yesterday's chaos, and even that would be hidden soon enough beneath a fresh coat of primer. Yet the people who had been there would remember more than paint. The Seahawk pilots would replay radar sweeps in their dreams, hearing the tonal blip that meant target locked. The merchant captain would recall the split second when a rocket's exhaust washed across his bridge windows like a blowtorch, and the Trident guards, when they finally emailed their families, would downplay their part but quietly know that 3-second bursts of suppressive fire at 1,800 meters had bought the extra heartbeat Lancer 71 needed to arrive. Vigilance, teamwork, overwhelming firepower. The triad had fused into a single, seamless defense that spanned contractors, mariners, aviators, and analysts, a coalition of momentary necessity but enduring effect. So the final log entry for the incident remained deceptively small. 0700 Zed, convoy secure, Seahawk escort RTB, task force continuing north at 14 knots. Behind those clipped words lived a whole universe of tracer arcs stitching the dawn, of chaff drifting like confetti behind rotor blades, of 5-inch shells arcing silently into coastal hills, and of adversaries suddenly confronted with the steep price of maritime banditry. The sea absorbed it all: smoke, shrapnel, heroism, fear, then looked as it always does, glassy, indifferent, eternal. And somewhere just below that mirrored surface, 3 shattered Baghamars rested on the seabed, mute witnesses to a lesson taught with unmistakable clarity in the language of naval gunfire and rotor-borne fury.